about stuff. Here he is.
Thank you. Hi guys. Okay, so I would like to talk to you about empathy. I heard about it last year, to be honest. It used to be something I was concerned about because it's a big word, basically, and it sounds like big and massive change in the way we should design every day and for small or large projects. So I was very concerned about that, and it kicked me very hard in my head and said like, wow, it's going to be something I need to learn or something. And of course, all the media and everything we read sometimes on the blogs and on the stories we read, it was also very massive from Twitter and other spaces where we can connect with other designers. So it felt like it's something very big for designers, like a core attribute for designers, like something like you become like some kind of superhero or something, or a kind of superpower for designers. Wow, I was like, well, weird. So yeah, I've been told, and maybe you probably did, being told that this is the thing we must use, and it was pretty abstract to me. Even the boss or the client told me like, have you heard about empathy? I was like, wow, okay, interesting, yeah, tell me about it. And then, yeah, then unfortunately, like many words we hear about or we read about, there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of discussion that is a bit like making trouble, and then we start to forget what is it about from the root. Well, that's why I wanted to talk to you about this today, designing with empathy. And take it easy, because it's when I try to look around and on the past, it seems that something that is pretty old. It's not something new, actually, after all. It's a new term, we kind of use it, but social workers are using it for decades or a long time ago. Some jobs and some professions or some roles are using it for a long time either. And it's actually a story about everything we create, basically. Art, literature, from the ancient Greece. If you look very back, old in the time, it's really like really old. And what we just do now is actually showing it to clients, showing this kind of model that you see here that agencies can use and share how the designers are actually creating the craft. And it shows like a process to the clients, like step 1, step 2. It's a way to sell basically a work and to express that the agency is not only using 100% pure metrics or pure research based on numbers or quantitative research, but also like qualitative research. Observation, captured data, you know that, reflection, analysis, brainstorming, prototyping then forward. And this kind of, I've been browsing many different charts like these ones, trying to explain how it should be involved and how it should fit actually a product design flow. And in both graphs, as you can see, it appears very early. And I found it weird, because for me, empathy is something probably more even global. It's not something I can put on the step like that. It's something that can arrive in the middle of a project or at the end when I craft my icons or something. So I was thinking like, some people are thinking about empathy probably in a different way than I do, and I wanted to see what they mean by that. And for them, it was like, we shouldn't think about the users immediately, but we need to think about the people. So basically, you create an app for your clients, or you create an app for your own business, and you think about, before thinking about users, you try to look a little bit wider than just users. You just try to look at people's needs in general, not just people who use a phone already, something else, something wider than that. So it's what turns user into people. You just don't ask them what features they want, but you try to establish a better research on them, what they are trying to accomplish, for example, you know, this kind of things you can deal with. So I still feel it's something big and like, wow, you know, empathy, users, let's unite, it's gonna be big, like the world is changing, it's a cult or something, I don't know. And many agencies are doing this, and I was worried. I was like, I didn't get it yet. So I was even again looking for the official definitions, or kind of official definitions. And for me, the easiest definition I found online and many places when I talk to my other designers and friends is like, you have to try to be in someone else's shoes. It's a basic way to describe or to define what is empathy. You basically, I'm in my shoes and I'm going to be in your shoes, you know, that kind of things. So is it easy for designers? I don't know. For me it was a bit difficult, especially if the shoes are smelly. And we also know it's different from sympathy. What I knew as well is that sympathy is a bit stronger, and it's trying to cheer someone. For example, you have someone who share an emotion with you, and you're just trying to have a certain compassion to him and try to cheer him up. So you try to influence him inside his own emotions. And empathy is a bit different because you have to stay, at the same time you really care about what he says, you have to take a certain distance to this person. So it's a kind of ambiguous to me. I had an example of a friend just skating 3 weeks ago, and he got hurt on the knee, and I got a Skype conference with him, and he just showed me his wound, a very large pain, and by being 9,000 miles away, I felt something for him, and I felt like, well, it's kind of empathy, something like brainy that we all have naturally in our brain, that is kind of natural feeling. So it's not something, it's something we can learn and we can study inside ourselves, but it's something we all have in a certain quantity or a certain sensitivity, I would say. First definition, the ability to be aware of, understanding of, and sensitive to another person's feelings and thoughts. Wow. It's big. And it's not finished without having had the same experience. So it's a big challenge for me. And I felt like this last part is the most important one, because I don't want to experience the pain of everybody, you know. And I thought that this definition is so big and so large that I have to find maybe a simpler one from John and Julian: develop an interest in what motivates others, and especially what motivates their responses. I think it's more interesting as a designer, because it's more like focused on what we should care about somehow. It's less philosophical, it's probably more practical. And I was interested in empathy inside our brain, how it works. So they even created frameworks. Wow, frameworks to understand some brain activity from the discovery, then have an emotion that goes back to your own experience of yourself, things that you know about yourself. So it's basically a kind of link that we create from our own experience with some other's experience. And this link is totally happened here. And I just remember something. I remember this movie. Have you seen this movie? It's called Being John Malkovich. It's exactly what's happening in the movie, and I put even a picture of it. It's funny because that's exactly what I was thinking about empathy. And the guy is basically entering the guy's brain. And I was fascinated by that. I was thinking, wow, I don't know, Facebook, 1 billion users, I need to do that every day with so many users. It's going to be a pain in the ass. But basically, this is being in someone else's shoes, for real. I mean, it's in a movie, huh? But basically, as you see the pictures, the guy is going out, he's going to pack his stuff and leaving the home, and basically we all identify somehow, like this character. So immediately we see someone else, in his eyes, in his emotions, we can immediately connect with ours. See, the guy is leaving his home. So our home is maybe different, but it's the same thing we do every day when we go to office. You know, look in the mirror. You know, that kind of stuff. So this is a kind of imagination I have about empathy, and now it's back to reality. So it's a bit more difficult. And when you have to deal with a client who has no endless budgets, open timescales, things like that, who no budget for any ethnographic study or research techniques, then the reality is much different. So what do we have left? What do we have at least? We have our own brain, we still have our own ability to think and to try to listen to our users. And basically that's what I thought about empathy. It's a kind of way to also rely a little bit more on ourselves and our capability to observe. So I was thinking about how I could actually develop this empathy things. So I was thinking about the first thing I did when I was a kid. I was doing drama classes. And I think drama classes is pretty interesting because you actually learn to be inside the persona, inside the mood and the character of someone. And by doing so, actually you try to understand someone who has a different personality than you probably, or a different mood or different emotions. And it's not always someone you like. It can be someone you hate, or you can have this person who has a very bad mood or something. And I didn't have good marks when I was young to that, but I felt like this technique can bring you something a bit unexpected about emotions in general. So I was thinking it's a way probably to get out a bit of what I know about my own life and avoid applying my own personal things into this. So it's a way to self-discover maybe some other emotions. I was thinking in the design steps as well to start small. I think it's important for me because many product managers kind of hate me sometimes because I do a lot of little details list of the problems I could find on the app or questions I could have on the app. And usually it's like, we really appreciate your work, but we don't have much to get done on the product, and you don't have to tweak things like this. Tweak, you know, it's kind of pejorative things to hear, and you say like, I'm here to tweak stuff, so it's not very nice. But I always keep trying, and of course the product manager sometimes, or the product designers, they seem to expect the designer to just talk for 2 minutes, to say the big words, to make a massive impression in 2 minutes, and then drop the microphone. But basically this is not our work. Sometimes we also have to do the little things that takes a lot of time, that are slow, that are difficult. And then you can understand it's not only a deliverable, it's more about a process, as you said, design is process. And made of very small observations, basically. I feel also that, as I say, empathy is a compassion about bad things. It's sometimes it's about good things too. You can be very happy and share the happiness to others. But I think it works also very well with all the frustration aspects of a user experience on an app or something. So I was thinking about all these kind of things. And I always have a question when I work on an app, for example, is what basically happens for your user if your app is requiring internet and there's no more internet anymore. What do you do? What can I do then? And how I can manage the pain and the frustration here of my users. It's a kind of thing that empathy works very well. So for example, I click that button, naturally it's red, I want to click on it. It's not a bank website, but still it's red, so I click on it, and then I have to load a page that is actually stored on the server. What the fuck? I was like, what? It's really for real? They didn't store it locally, something like helping you to manage your internet connection. Yeah, and Twitter is using red, and you see sometimes we use the kind of emoticons or little elements like that to say, I am sad, you know, for it doesn't work. So what do we do when we do that? We just said, we share a little bit of your sadness. We understand you are not very happy of what's happening right now. Okay, you can use red, it's pretty aggressive, but you can also use this icon and help a bit. And sometimes it's also the fault of the user, so you have to be patient with your user and not always be so aggressive and say you ended up in the wrong page because you did the wrong thing, basically. And you know, it's a bit of a trendy right now to really hit and troll on Apple. And I like this friend designer who was make videos and screenshots about bad designs. And this guy is called Eliscape, and he's doing something about the Apple signature. On the background sound, this is an Apple commercial, and on the foreground, you have a guy trying to resize a window, and he cannot. But basically, yeah, it's very easy to understand the pain as designers about it, you know? So here it's very easy to understand the pain because we are designers, because we use this interface. But sometimes our clients, our users, are not using the same thing as we do. And then comes what we call the empathy paradox. And you disclosed a little bit about that earlier, but basically we are not our users, not always. And that's the big of a paradox, the more we think we know a user, and the less we really make efforts to know him better. So basically, we do that with all of our friends sometimes. We know a friend, at the beginning we meet someone new, we make a connection with a friend, and this friend, we spend many years with him, and then we think we know them. But how can we be so sure after? We never know. We never know, and people change. So it's not that easy to imagine that empathy create a kind of satisfaction to say, okay, I know these people, but actually we just know something at a certain reference of time. And also the empathy can show a little bit of its limits when we use it alone, without any other tools. And of course, as designers, we have plenty of tools of the trade, like Persona and other tools, and it's not really good to work only with Persona either. And each of these tools have their limits, but the idea is to use them all together. And to conclude, I just say, yeah, we are not our user, and make sure that when we dog food, we test our own product, make sure that we don't have too much bias affect, because all bias always affect our cognitive and experience. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Yeah, and this is a nice video I found today, and it's called The Colors of Feelings. It's made by a video designer, and it's not 3D, it's really made of real materials. Paint, oil, milk, honey, and cinnamon. And I was thinking that this is exactly what I felt about emotions of our users. It's really messed up. How can you really make sure that you understand your user if you just look up here or here? And at the end, it cannot blend up all together. And yeah, so I don't know if you have any questions or interrogations about empathy still.
Stick your hand up.
Hey, Gabriel, hello. When do you have to conduct tests with your subjects, like you're a freelancer against a large company such as Imagination? How do you handle these must-do tests?
So I think the question is about user testing and where does it fit in the process. Of course, depending on the size of the app, on the calendar, or the schedule we have on the project timeline, again, the tests, I try to establish them not too late because I always test things before actually showing them to the clients during the presentations. So for me, the two rules is just do the work and test your shit before you show it to the clients. And that means that I have all the ability to present the work in the best way, and I have the best ability and confidence to do it. Because otherwise, it's really a dangerous game to always show something I haven't tested. So the presentation can happen in the middle of the project or early in the project, and I have to explain like what kind of test I've done and explain what kind of results we get on it. And also, of course, the limitations of the test, like there's a lot of unknown things, and maybe need the help of the client to refine a little bit the data we need. Yeah.
Hi, thank you that was really interesting. I noticed that you focused a lot about what is empathy, and now you mentioned the testing that you've been doing, I guess, after. But do you have any tips on how do you know? Like, how would you know if you are genuinely understanding what's going on in the user's head, or some of the user's heads, or any idea? Like how do you, what type of tests do you do, or what type of tips do you have to give us in order to do that?
Okay, thanks. The methods are pretty empiric for me. The methodology I have is not based on canon books or reference from UX designer, honestly. The tips sounds very obvious to me, but it's just basically try to listen what the user is not saying sometimes. We focus so much on what they say, and what they don't say matters as much, actually. So sometimes I try to elude some questions just to see if they get to the point of the real topic, and if they make the connection by themselves from point A to point B in the flow of the question, or the logic of the question, then it means that they probably have a strong ability to connect the dots together. And if they don't, it means that things are not that obvious and probably need to refine or something. But the test, definitely the test is about try to bring emotions in the design and see if they can identify themselves into it, or if they can identify the emotions that are shared on the product. So it's a kind of reversed, basically. It's like trying to ask what kind of emotions they have according to what they see, and see if it could be matching the objectives of the client. The question depends actually on who is the target. If my users are not the clients, that makes things a little bit more difficult. And generally the plan is to support the research. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. Have you ever used empathy to say no to one of your clients? like for a feature, like oh, we want to do this, and then you say, well, no, because the user doesn't want this.
Yeah, this is the limit of the empathy sometimes. Did I make my point clear? The user is not an excuse, you know. If you feel, based on your research and based on your own understanding of the product, if you feel something's wrong, I should just say I, or collectively as a team, we actually think that there's probably a better way to solve that business problem, or to actually address this concern you think about your users. But it's a very easy to say, to talk about the users as if they're very far away, and then say, we think that. I don't want to use that as an excuse, but honestly, if you do your craft well and everything, you don't need to find any excuse like that, because as I say, when you start to show things to the client, you make your research and make your stand very clear. But I know before, when I was a young designer, I was always playing with the user. It's easy, it's a very easy thing to do, and it's not, in the long run, it's totally useless, because you can see how the user disengage from the app, for example. So yeah, in a conclusion, it's a tool I did before, but I don't recommend it to do it any longer. Find the excuse of the user says, and if it's really what you think, you should distinguish it, and not trying to find a reason that is not real. This is the bias thing I was talking about. It's easy to assume things when even you have empathy. That's a kind of a paradox situation, because you think you know them, and actually it's just about what you want, and it's not leading anywhere this way, I think. It's better not to have any empathy at the end if you do that.
Any more questions?
Oh, thanks, you. Just using this mic. So, actually, following your paradox of empathy, I'm wondering, when you start designing UX, do you start with where you want it to go as a designer, where you're like, man, this would be the best way to resolve this? Or are you thinking about it, or are you starting, like, really at the starting point, your personal opinion, and obviously an educated opinion, and so on, or like, hey, what would the user want? Where do you start?
Thank you. I start with people. I don't even start with users. For the clients, users doesn't even exist yet sometimes. There's a market. They think about a market. I think about a market too. And then I try to discuss with them, what do you think about this market? What kind of opportunities you want? And then, of course, as a designer, this can be very exciting. And then you start to think about the users. And if by any chance you have, that happens sometimes, the app or the product you're designing that target a little bit of who you are in terms of demographics, that is easy, you know? I know some people here who's designing apps for wine. Can you believe that? Designing an app for wine products. It's so easy, I mean, everybody drinks wine. But yet, it's not that easy to make choices sometimes in terms of design decisions. So I guess that some products are easier to target and because you are a consumer or because you are an existing user. But sometimes it's totally different, like banking or corporate banking, as you said, or corporate finance. You realize that there's a lot of observation to do and research, and ask all of these kind of naive questions that are fundamental at the end to really sort things out. But again, it's from the view of the client. It's not enough as well. You need another view. And I don't know how to call that. It's called maybe intellectual honesty or something, but just trying to vary the sources, basically. I work with journalists often, and this is exactly what they do. They vary the sources. They can't just rely on one source. They try to vary the sources. And that's what I learned as well. I didn't study UX design, actually. I never been to any school like UX design school. I just learned it through the experience of time, basically. And that's how I made up the idea of trying to understand the user a little bit better and the people who could use the app or the product you design. Yeah. Is another question?
Thanks. Do you have any personal experience of a project that with this empathy you took some design decision that then you tested and it failed miserably?
You mean, sorry, can you?
Yeah, just if you have any example of a project that you've done where your empathy told you to do one thing and then you tested afterwards and it didn't work?
I have plenty of those, oh my god.
Can you give one?
Probably the most recent. I work right now on the Internet of Things platform in a business to business or for large industrial applications. And I didn't know anything about it, so I assumed a lot. And we from Switzerland, because we're based in Switzerland, from Switzerland we asked the existing clients and users to test our new platform, including dashboards and all sorts of screens to control and manage the data they get from these IoT objects. And yeah, I totally sucked. I mean, I was just the other way wrong. And what's good is that sometimes the intuition comes from yourself. You can feel sometimes you don't know everything yet, and you need to dig a little bit more. And then, as I said earlier, the clients need to help you. You can't just be alone with these things. You need a client to help you to ask their final client to ask a little community base to test and evaluate what you currently design. And of course that means that the designer doesn't have all the answers. But anyway, you get all the questions, and then the designer can make better decisions. So that's the purpose at the end of the road.
That's it? Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.